hazelnut spread. A lot of things are calling themselves spread. I was at the grocery store today, and it was like stuff they used to call itself like jelly or jam or butter.
Oh, because they can't
now calling itself
legally
spread.
do it.
Yeah.
They probably don't have enough pectin or something inside
exactly.
it for it to be a legal jelly or jam anymore.
I'll keep eating that garbage.
Maybe it's because Ron DeSantis has passed a law. His anti-oat milk laws or whatever now also apply to spreads.
Isn't banning oat milk like kind of woke, actually?
I don't know. I don't know if they banned it, but I thought they just like forced naming conventions where you can't call it milk unless it comes from a cow.
Which has to be like oat juice or something.
Oat beverage.
It has to come from a tit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which in a vacuum does make sense to me, but not in a vacuum. I'm like, yeah, I might as well just call it milk. That's what it's there to do, is be milk. But
It's Alex!
all right, it's time for another episode of View from 202, episode 275 of View from 202. After our little spring break.
Well, I mean, there's a reason that we had to take off. It was kind of complicated. I mean, it's why Sam isn't here right now.
Yeah.
After 202 golf, there was an incident with the Louisville police, and Sam got arrested.
Louisville?
You heard about the Scotty Scheffler thing?
Oh, I didn't see. I'm not big enough on
the golf news.
Now, if you had said we were outside of Neom in Saudi Arabia, I would have figured we must be on the 54 tour. See, now I know it's called the 54
you should
tour.
have gone for a more like composite golf course or like famous golf course as a way of
Right,
piecing the
Valhalla.
joke together. You should,
Right,
you should have
yeah.
said like Augusta National or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, this was at a kind of not known golf course, I guess, or like a golf course the PJ will not be returning to.
Marine Park?
Yeah.
They should do it at Marine Park. Why not?
The tour.
Yeah, who cares?
It is the longest golf course in New York City.
They should have like some PGA events at like shitty old school courses like NASCAR still races at like Darlington and Martinsville and shit.
Yeah.
Or like F1 at Monaco.
Yeah.
Just like everything's like too small and they can't.
Right.
Everyone keeps on hitting it out of bounds because they cannot.
It's a new challenge. They were, in golf, they've been talking like guys are just hitting it too long. The courses, do they have to extend them? No. Make them shorter. It's a different challenge.
They should have like an entire par 3 event.
You know,
A par 3 course, yeah.
Say
A
no
pitch and
to
putt.
say no to velocity. It's part of the same movement.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going
Sports
lo-fi.
degrowth.
Yeah.
Let's go.
The swing speeds are getting too high.
Yeah. We gotta make bats uneven again. We gotta
Bats
have them all come pre-cracked, so they all shatter. at
Only
each at-bat.
Timu clubs.
Yeah.
No, those are the ones that go far.
Ironically, for soccer, I feel like this means that you have to insist on the socks not being ripped. They have to be
On
in
the
one.
back, yeah.
Your equipment actually has to be intact.
Just one sock though, because
Yeah.
people are doing the cutoff sock stuff, and that's not okay either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're back after what, like 2.5 weeks off, 2 weeks off. Sam is sick in our crazy, month that was. He has come down with sickness and will not be featuring on this episode. So you're stuck with the three of us, Brit, Cork, and Peaches, as we recap not one, not two, but 3 matches for your New York Red Bulls. And those included 2 wins and a loss against familiar foes, Eastern Conference opponents. First, New England at home for 2-win, then DC away, a 3-1 win. We just
4-2 or 3-1. Yeah, 3-1.
And then at away, I guess, at NYCFC at Citi Field for a 2-1 loss. So I think we should cover the 2 wins together as sort of a unit first.
What had happened, actually, that we took off was we had just assumed that you could listen to any of the 2023 episodes and get an idea.
A good taste of what playing DC and New England all the time
and
is like.
NYCFC.
Yeah, we were sick of talking about it.
Unfortunately, these games were a little different than last year, too.
The opening thing that they said as they kicked off on TV against New England was that this is the third most common matchup in MLS history.
The other two must be Philly and DC for us.
Oh my God, yeah. I wonder what the first two are. I don't know.
Might be a Western Conference.
I guess it's got probably
LA,
like
San
Columbia,
Jose.
Columbus, and somebody, or
Yeah. But that made me.
Well, which original team has been in the same conference forever? It's probably like us, New England, and like Galaxy.
Yeah.
Jose.
Or San Jose was out of the
And
league
they went
for
to
a while,
Houston, yeah.
So
Dallas.
they would be cut out. DC.
Dallas might have flipped back and forth.
I think Dallas has flipped back and
They
forth.
have. They've been in these
KC has
conferences.
flipped back and forth.
Right.
Chicago's short a year.
And it's flipped back and forth.
Chicago.
Or they
Not an
flip back and
original, but
forth.
like, oh, okay.
I
They
still think
flip
it's ridiculous
conferences.
they call Chicago an expansion team. It's not. It was not an expansion. Let's get real. But
Does Chicago still have like a dog mascot?
I don't know.
God, who knows?
Everything's been
Well, when they that was, it would be funny if they had a Latin Kings mascot, since that's what apparently when they switched their logo and switched their colors to that thing they abandoned a few years ago, the main concern was like, oh, it looks like a Latin Kings jersey.
Wow, really?
Like,
Yeah, that's locked away in the same old vault as the Houston 1836
Yeah,
logos
God,
and everything. Which again, I really wish I had attended that press conference that for some reason was at my middle school. They even asked me if I wanted to come. But anyway, I felt like a little bit less insane when they said that, because Lord knows we felt like we've been playing New England a million times recently. And this matchup was one going into it. We said on this very show that, frankly, with the Red Bulls' improved form and better individual performances over the season, that this is one where you have to think you'd like to see a win, especially bouncing back from a sort of middling period of form where we had lost, or we had drawn all those games, and then we finally got an ugly loss down in Miami. Now is the time where you sort of needed to make a statement of having a real solid bounce back here if this season was going to come to something, positive. And that's what they did. We got 2 wins here against New England and DC. Would you describe this as the team sort of excelling, meeting expectations, holding serve, going above and beyond? I don't know. What did you think of New England and DC for these 2 matches where we came out on top and scored 4 goals each time?
I thought it was pretty the goal the score lines might seem a little more than this, but it did feel like it was what I was expecting from both games, where we did come out on top, but both of those teams gave us a little bit of trouble the whole time for different kind of ways, where I think like we were just dealing with Christian Benteke, who is physical, big, and we did kind of well with him, but it's hard to keep up, and we did. And for New England, it was just kind of like a little bit like you were saying, like playing a little pickup against some dudes who were just trying to just figure out the ball, even though there are some guys with quality. But overall, I think the way we linked up and the way that we play is just a little bit better than those teams, and then we get the better scores.
Yeah, I think it's I think it is kind of the way you just summed it up, where I think we do have just a little bit of an edge on both those squads, just being, a little bit more of a complete team with, a bit more maybe dimensions to our play than those 2 teams, which are both teams who are under new coaches, who are kind of starting new cycles with their squads. Mind you, we're technically under a new coach, and technically, according to the big letter that they put out last year, we're technically resetting our squad. But it's, we're basically playing with the same squad that we have for the last 2 or 3 years with Forsberg. So we're more of a settled team that's, trying to, maybe do bigger things than New England, DC, that are trying to, kind of restart things. And I think you saw that, big picture in these 2 results and in the way that we were able to come out on top. But I think in a more kind of tactical and a more, the actual dynamics of the game the games. It was a situation, I think, in both these games where it shows the advantage, especially given the way we play, of scoring first and making the other team have to chase the game, because certainly New England got exposed in the back. I mean, I thought the New England game, broadly speaking, was a very even one. Perhaps maybe even New England playing a bit better on the day as far as what they did with the ball. But, I think New England has some pretty talented players in the attacking third, which we've known for a while. But, I mean, especially, Chunkalai, I guess, is kind of a new emerging player, and a few of their younger homegrown guys are coming in and contributing, and I think it's just very you see them pull off some very impressive stuff on the attacking side of the field, but then on the other end their defense is held together with silly putty and paper clips, and you got ancient Andrew Farrell kind of waddling around back there, and the second that there's a bit of a margin, a bit of extra space, they're stepped up one or two steps too high trying to chase the game, trying to force action on our side. They just get ripped apart, and that's what you saw on the goals. And you saw kind of a parallel situation in the DC game. Mind you, DC didn't really fall behind until later in the game, more in the second half, but still a situation where when with the way we play, when we force another team to have to kind of fight from behind, have to chase the game, take more risks, send more numbers forward, pull their defensive line up high, that's where we kind of feast. And, I think it should be credit to Schwartz and the team that we are kind of feasting on those situations, whereas it became kind of a more frustrating thing in the Struber years where, the team just could not kill off games. They would go up one or two goals, but just not, keep laying on the pressure, and eventually, they would get tired and the other team would find their opportunities late, and you'd get these, just very frustrating draws all the time. And we're not getting that out of those situations. We're getting good results out of those situations this year. So I think that should be a credit to Schwartz. And, I think another point that this touches on is that, we've kind of had it as a theme this season as the team's form has picked up and the kind of the expectations have started to pick up, where it's kind of like, beating bad teams, winning the games you're supposed to win is an important, step to proving that you're, a real contender. And that's what happened in these two games. So, can't really complain there.
Which is funny because I feel like we usually have a hard time beating the teams we should beat when we are a contender,
Right.
But I was going to mention, when you mentioned that Andrew Farrell was old, that I think he might be one of the last players who's allowed to wear his number. But I looked it up, and he was born in 92. So I don't even know why he does wear 88.
88. Uh-oh.
We still have a few years left on that.
Yeah.
We were actually, when we were in our chat the night of the game, we were talking that, we were talking about, man, how's Farrell still around? He's so old. And we were kind of surprised that he was only 32, quote unquote. Because I guess he came out of college a year early, and he's just always been a relevant MLS guy immediately. And it has been legit 11, 12 years. So.
Right. I guess a similar player, if he kept playing instead of going to coaching, for me would have been Chris Duval.
Yeah, I was about to say that. We were talking about the other day.
They are kind of similar players, similar roles.
I wonder if Duval had... Well, I guess he did play for the Impact for 2 years, as I read out his Wikipedia page for everyone here. But part of me wonders if he had played for DC or New England,
he'd be in the league longer.
Yeah, if he just would have found a way to stick around, because 2014 to 2016 when he was with us, we were churning over the squad a lot more. Yeah,
he was too soon for Nashville to exist.
That's true. Exactly. Yeah, he just needed to hold on a little longer. I can get in my time machine and say, Chris, just hold on.
wait for the Heartland to start creating some teams.
Yeah. But yeah, I think on this theme as well, it's nice to see the team reward good performances and take advantage of good performances, particularly from Carlos Coronel, who made some very good saves in these two games.
Yeah.
not
they were very even games. I mean, it's not like we were playing either of these teams off the pitch. And I was kind of thinking, when we started off, where I was kind of like, would you call these results like outclassing the other team? And I think I'm kind of hesitant to say that for that reason, where it was like, the other team was fighting and throwing punches too. They just but they landed 2 or 3 less than we did.
But you mean that for like connotation's sake, not denotation's sake. Like we, like in a sense, we were a class above these teams. But
I think it is kind of like, that's where I'm kind of at, where it is sort of like
like if you say that to someone, they're going to think, oh, you like destroyed that.
I think then it's like, what was the extra edge that we had to come out on top? And I think you can maybe say that it was players like Forsberg and Maya, Morgan, stuff like that, who had
Harper,
that extra bit of even Harper had that extra bit of quality to punish teams. But then I think the other teams did too. They just didn't have that kind of foundation and drive that I guess we apparently do this year, which like I said, kind of credit to Schwartz.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like we're getting into the basics really well. And I also feel like we were talking about how much Kyle Duncan has contributed to the first team. And, it's not like Dylan Nealis hasn't been playing. So I think his man management in terms of like getting players out there and like we're saying, rewarding play is pretty good. I wonder what the relationship is more like with Sandro and the players. But to me, it seems like it should be good.
Yeah, and this was a bit of a coming out party for this season for Cameron Harper in these 2 to 3 games. And as we'll get to in the City game, he certainly had his moment there too, even though we lost, which was nice to see. I was, I don't know, worried might be overstating a little bit, but about a month ago, I was a little quietly concerned about his play. I don't know. I thought he wasn't stinking up the game. He wasn't a liability for us on the pitch a month ago, certainly, but he was not really making an impression. So it's nice to see a little bit of flair and productivity come out of him in these 3 matches here. But you had faith?
Oh, I hope a listener will bring up the idea that I think that Cam Harper could, like, I had this hypothesis that Sandro Schwartz could bring like a little bit more to what he has before, and just like he has to every other player. And I always felt that like Cam Harper was an option that we were kind of underlooking for this season in terms of like who can contribute and like grow as a player. And I think he's someone who I rate him better than Yengor in a lot of ways. And I've done that like a little bit, maybe even at the beginning of the season.
I mean, it is nice to have a player like that around. I mean, again, I do think that was one of the more, what's the word? I don't know, sort of professional acquisitions that Thelwell made, and that it was just a nice like rounding out of the squad. There was not a huge opportunity cost for picking up Cameron Harper. He's
a domestic player,
cheap domestic player with upside, but like we're gonna have room for him on the squad, and it allows us to be in a situation where he could have a little bit of a quiet way to start the season. I think he had a little bit of fitness issues he was working through. And I think it's a sea change to be in a situation.
He's also now admitted or come out and disclosed that he had some terrible injury in preseason, which raises yet again the question of like, what the hell what are our training sessions?
We need another doctor.
But it is good that I think we
already got another doctor, and guys are still getting hurt.
More in a situation where there's a little bit more slack in the squad to have guys contribute like this. I feel like for most of 2020 onwards, we were sort of in a situation where it was like, oh, we've got this system and we just need the right guy. And like every time we'd, bring someone in or someone would get fit, it'd be like, oh, this is going to be it. Like he's the key to all this, like, and I felt like it put so much pressure on individual players. It put so much pressure on the team. I can only speak about what the vibe was from the outside looking in as a fan and just basing off of comments. I don't know how it was in training, of course, but now it feels like we're not in that situation at all. I think the most extreme version of this, of course, was like, when Sergio Goma has a nice game in his debut and like scores like a winner late in the match, it makes it so it's not just like a feel good story of a young player has a really nice goal. It like with
He's the
alarming
future,
speed,
yeah.
it was like, oh, this is like a key to how we play. And I'm like, we don't, even if I believed that, like he's only played a couple minutes. Anyway, this is all to say that I don't think we're in that situation anymore now. And Cameron Harper.
Like, well, just to add on to your point, the other end of that was kind of the foundation of my recurring joke of some of the older Red Bulls fans might remember, because we were having these players who were put in front of us as like the most important thing that's ever happened to the team. And then a month later, they were just like on the bench or playing for RB2 or something. And it was just a never ending cycle of that. And like Brit's saying, it just became so exhausting, and probably exhausting to the players and the team too, to have just a new person have to be, the new hope, the new hero every couple months.
Yeah, it's like the margins are always so thin.
Right.
Like there's you can't make any mistake. I mean, like, right, Max Verstappen made a mistake this weekend, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like he couldn't have made that mistake when he was challenging Lewis Hamilton for the championship, or like Duke, that kind of thing. But if we have a little bit more room to try these things, I think yeah, it's just like it takes the pressure off, and you can kind of play your game a little bit more. And the thing about Cameron Harper too is that the one thing I like about him being in the squad at all is just that he's just a different profile of a player that we might not necessarily have been going after to like fit directly into a very specific role, right? We have the flexibility to have a guy who's a little bit more direct, a little bit of a winger who can kind of go charge. And also I think that's the case with Corey Burke when he scores his goal this week. We have a guy who just kind of takes up that striker position and is able to turn and kind of shoot, I guess, in a way that we don't really have other number 9s on this team, even though, like, I know that the number 9 is dying as a position, but like, it's nice to be able to have the flexibility and the room to have that kind of player on the squad, because everything isn't so precisely like choreographed to work, and if something goes out of sequence, we'll all fall apart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think you could say this also about the way we were talking about Forsberg on our last episode too, that he has also not hit the ground running 100%. Yeah, he's been like pretty decent, but it's a testament to this year's squad and the management that we've still been able to have a pretty decent beginning of the year, even without that. On the subject of the number 9 dying, that does remind me that I wandered into a pop-up vintage kit store this weekend and did see a Charlton Athletic Darren Bent shirt, which, that was proper number 9 business. Well, I don't know. Was he number 9? I don't know. Business, though, right there. So that was good. But yeah, this is I think, encouraging little run of form before the City game, of course. A nice little... I think it was really necessary, actually, because following the Miami loss and the Vancouver win, if we don't get 6 points out of these games, I think it really makes it look like we're in a downturn here, and I wonder if morale really starts to bottom out. I think it's also nice to see the team score some pretty quality goals, but it's not...
I literally said, because I came out of retirement briefly to write up the game or preview the game for the New England ex-SB site anyway, and said in my column that, like, as well as the team's been playing, there hasn't really been an explosive, goal scoring performance, and then they got 2 of them in a row. So.
Yeah. But it's not the kind of thing where like it's crazy golazos from individual guys. I mean, like there's like some very good quality here, and like Elias Manuel, of course, has his very long chip, and Cameron Harper has his sort of wonder goal against City, even though it was a loss. But
would the Morgan goal be a tap in on the meter on the counter?
I think I think the Manuel goal against New England came to mind as like it's not quite like an aesthetic tap in, but it was kind of, I remarked when we were just going over it again just now, where it's like Manuel doesn't score that goal that often because he doesn't get set up that often. Not to say that he shouldn't be scoring more, or he shouldn't be, producing more, but it's still just like, going back through all the strikers this team has cycled through the last several years, where it's just like,
You're talking about the one where he turns and then
Well, where
or,
he gets the ball inside the
and turns,
6-yard box and can take a touch and slot it in, and it's just like,
Just clarifying because it's not the 1 year goal.
no. I'm talking. I said New England,
Right.
and I kind of lost my train of thought as far as, but like all the strikers that we've been churning through the last few years that,
Doesn't
they
receive the
can't
ball
just
in the
score.
middle.
They can't score goals out of nothing. Nobody in MLS can score goals out of nothing. You need to actually be getting the ball into the box and getting the ball into those dangerous areas for them to actually be expected to score or finish, quote unquote. I think more to the point, on a regular basis. And it's not to say that Manuel hasn't missed some of those chances where he's been fed, but you still have to be fed in the first place to be able to score them. And that's just my piece there.
Yeah, maybe these two games are sort of an example of the middle ground between the tap-in meter and individual wonder strikes, where a lot of these goals were created or finished with like a nice bit of skill at the end, like the drag backs from Harper and like the nice little turn from Manuel that are like not crazy, like unique, exceptional bits of quality, but they're very nice little flashes of skill. But I think they also happen in a context where the defender is selling out and like really desperate, and we dragged the opponent around in a situation where they're not just parked in their final third and we're desperately flinging things into the box. We're on the front foot. And that's, I think, still a big difference from how we were playing, from 2020 to 2023, more or less. So it's an encouraging trend nonetheless. But yeah, good to see us rack up some confident wins against opponents we feel like we should. Ironically, I did not attend the NYCFC match because I was in DC that weekend, and I was actually like right next to Audi Field. That was the only
At Buzzard Point.
That was the only hotel
Wow.
that we could find last minute.
Were you in the food desert that we were in?
Well, I was going to say when we were watching the broadcast of the game, they had just some B-roll shots from outside the stadium, and it looked like way more developed around there than it was even a couple of years ago when we were there in person.
It does look like it's really blown up. I mean, one of our Lyft drivers really commented on that too, that even in the last couple of years, it's just exploded. And it seemed less like a food desert than when you guys explained.
Okay.
I mean, on the walk from the metro station, there is sort of like a mixed use mid-rise thing that goes like right between the metro station to the baseball stadium that is like fully built and like tenanted out now, and there's like a bunch of bars and stuff, and like it looked like
a lot of those were vacancies probably when we were there.
It looked like all the Republican congressional interns were like going out there.
Right.
Which not my scene, but people were out and about, so I was wondering though if that's actually like kind of what Harrison will look like eventually, even though Harrison had a 12-year head start, or like, well, not on Audi Field, but like the development of the area.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's only finally getting there now, and I think it'll look better with age eventually, but it's definitely a weird area down by those two stadiums in DC.
Just because it's still new, kind of.
Yeah. And
not lived in.
And also both of the actually, I don't really know if I got a solid look at the soccer stadium in the day.
It's real cheap.
Both of those stadiums look very generic from the outside too, which doesn't really help. But yeah, didn't see any DC United stuff around town now that I think about it. It didn't. Everyone was wearing national stuff, which kind of took me by surprise. But still not really dying to go to Audi Field.
Yeah, you're not missing much.
Yeah.
They had a horrible pitch for this game, by the way, because of whatever the fucking UFL or whatever.
Or
franchise.
USFL?
It's UFL. I think it's United Football League.
Which is crazy that that's around. I've never heard anyone talk about that. But I guess like thousands of people.
I guess there's just always venture capital companies who think that they can launch a spring football league every few years. So somebody gets on the end of the trough.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Just who is showing up and like buying a jersey to these things? I don't know. I wonder how much it overlaps with the kind of people who would show up to an MLS game. To be honest.
I wonder if they're all wearing Castor uniforms or something.
Is that what that demographic is?
Who knows?
Yeah.
I saw Indy 500 crews yesterday wearing Castor.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I think McLaren's a Castor team, so might be true.
That scans. Well, NYCFC at Citi Field. This is the first time we'd played at Citi Field. Peaches, I believe you were the only one who made it out to this.
I did. It was same old shit, just a different day.
Yeah.
Kind of. Well, it was nice to take the
Different stadium.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's I guess what I was kind of going for, but it was nice to take the LIRR out there from Penn Station. I did the whole march from Legends and everything. And I think getting there, the whole experience in general is like a little nicer. You know, the seats are a little nicer, the stadium's a little nicer in every way. But yeah, it just definitely felt like you're watching soccer at a baseball stadium again. And you get jumped by NYCFC fans when you're coming out of the stadium again. So it's like the same thing.
Yeah, what happened there? I was only piecing things together.
Yeah,
after
there's
the fact.
apparently some kind of like supporters group like stuff going on, but their guys like just started kind of stealing scarves and kind of punching some people.
So but you didn't see it in person?
I was watching it like from a few yards away, but I was trying to like get into a safe area, I guess. But I was wearing plain clothes, so I wasn't being targeted.
Was it like among was it just general crowd walking to the train?
It's like where the Apple area is, like that plaza, right?
Okay, so like, was there any
get out of Jackie Robinson
other people
Rotunda
who got caught up in the fracas?
Yeah, I mean, like we were kind of one of the first groups out, but like VA really got hit hard after we came out.
But like, what about non-supporters? Was there like?
I think like City fans just have a proclivity to maybe be violent because like guys were just running from the parking lot all of a sudden, I think, to join in. But those were the most, I guess, civilians that I saw. But
like, were the just like Joe Schmo regular
we were held
people
for
gone?
40 minutes afterwards. So it's like all those guys were already gone by the time we were like coming out. They waited for us.
Not to belittle it, but like there's every like, especially like away, like close derbies, like every game I've been to, there's always just knuckleheads trying to like just stir up shit.
Yeah, it's like
I don't really think it's like national news, but
no other club has this issue though. It's just so annoying because these guys, like, it just very much feels like they got every wrong lesson from what you're supposed to enjoy about soccer and just like went for that instead. It's like I just really I can't stand those guys and like the whole club and like everything. I just hate them.
Yeah, it does feel very try hard, and because
they brought the smokestacks to City.
Oh, just like on the field.
I guess kind of along the lines of what I was just saying. I think even pretending that there's some kind of like menace to the rest of the league is maybe giving them a little too much credit. I think it's just kind of like
they do seem to be.
I think there should be
disliked.
Repercussions for them, like, as a fan base. Like they don't get that, and if there's no like noise around it, I don't think they ever will.
I mean, this is making me think, or reminding me that in general, it just feels like supporter culture is way less, or supporter sections feels way less part of the identity and pitch of MLS right now, or priority when you talk about MLS right now.
Yeah.
Compared to like 5 years ago. I mean, 5 years ago, I think this still happens, but you get the perennial complaints from supporters groups that they get hit with sanctions and penalties for bringing in pyro and other stuff like that to the section. And then inevitably every year MLS runs ads with that is featuring heavily. And that no longer feels like the vibe that MLS is going for. Also, I don't know. It just feels like
it's not the culture.
Supporters maybe somewhat separately from that moment has passed a little bit, and that supporters culture and sections just seem a little down. Like we've been saying, no one has traveled to RBA in forever.
Yeah.
I feel like I haven't. It felt like it used to not be hard to overhear what was going on with other groups, like LA and Houston were getting into dust ups, or like
There's always shit going on in Montreal.
yeah. And then the Galaxies.
Toronto got banned that one year
Yeah,
recently.
but even stuff like less volatile than that, like the Galaxy were like doing a protest against their thing, and it just feels like the relevancy of that has really fallen off. And I wonder if it's part of the same sort of malaise that we've been talking about for a year or two on here, where just this sort of overexpansion of the league and high volatility of all the squads has kind of made everything feel a little fungible.
Well, I feel like it's also a little bit not that it's the fault of single entity, but maybe more the fact that it's now kind of like single media, to the point like where, you know, like obviously SB blogs and whatever and local coverage is down from the impacts of that, but just in general having Apple be in charge of like the state media for everything.
Yeah, and that's maybe something to it. Like not
also like it kind of felt like the goal of the league was to get that Apple deal, and now it's like
everything just feels like it's kind of So all
what do we do next from here? Like there's no like kind of like you fought for the broadcast deal.
Well, I guess to specific to this game, I guess a good segue to bring up is that in one way it was nice to have Twellman and whoever his like usual partner is, I can't remember, doing the play-by-play, but whoever broadcasting for the City game. Because it was the first time in a while. I feel like we get Cangelosi and Higginbotham pretty often, who they're, both, pretty, studied up and, pretty good pros and stuff like that. But then Twellman was an interesting twist from, the usual groups that we get, besides Cangelosi and Higginbotham, just the generic Apple crews that you get a lot of the time, where so many. I don't watch a lot of non-Red Bulls games these days, to be honest. But every time that I get one of these generic crews, Apple crews on a Red Bulls game, or venture into a different MLS game, everything feels so much like it's just a 90-minute advertisement for the league you're already watching. Like it's like they're reading, they're spending the whole time reading like their Wikipedia facts instead of like describing what's happening in the game. And it's just like, the whole time it's so didactic and trying to like it's introducing you to this thing that's, in the middle of this season that you're supposedly already a fan of and watching. I think that's just such an awkward tone to be taking that I think the league is just diving way too much into recently. So that's maybe just a little point that I have to make about this game. But on the other end of it, because I said, in a way, it was nice to have Twellman calling this game because he was a change of pace from that. But at the same time, Twellman was doing his own thing where he was kind of like, and I was mentioning this in our pre-production meeting just now, where it's kind of a thing where like, and granted, it is kind of bared out in the results to some extent. So it makes sense to that extent, but it's kind of a thing where national media still is not really like, paying attention to this club that much. And you can tell, when, national people parachute in to talk about our games, you can tell that they haven't been watching that much and don't know a whole lot of detail. But the difference this year is that in past years, it was that, the Red Bulls are doing okay, but they're just cheap. You don't have to worry about them. They're cheap and lame and, they suck. Was always kind of like the subtext of any national coverage of us. Whereas now, all of a sudden, I think part of this is Apple saying that we need to be a bit more chipper and a bit more salesman-like about all of our teams. Now, all of a sudden, it's a combination of that and signing, Forsberg as the quote unquote, Messiah star that we've always been asking for, I guess. That now all of a sudden that, just kind of parachuted, phoned in national conventional wisdom on the Red Bulls is that, they're great now. All of a sudden they're finally a team that's, worth paying attention to, where it's like, the form is a little bit better this year, but it's like not that much better than a lot of years that we've had recently.
It's not because of
and
Forsberg.
Certainly not much better than the Shield years. And it's not because of Forsberg.
Yeah, if anything, it's like they should talk about Sandro Schwartz more.
Right. Yeah, honestly. But I think that's an exact situation where, like, if you're watching the games and actually the rhythm of this team and how they're getting results and stuff like that, you are saying, like we kind of have been, that like, oh, Schwartz is really making a difference on this team. The manager is kind of a big deal in this salary capped league. But no, we are getting, and Twellman was doing this a lot, where it very much felt like he was just kind of, reading a brochure about the 2024 Red Bulls rather than doing actual analysis.
I get that. I think that shows. And I think, Peaches, to your point too, I do see what you're saying about maybe this tampering down fan enthusiasm or like supporter antipathy even with each other, that Lord knows there's always been a noxious little like for the good of the league sentiment in MLS fan bases, but it used to like come from the cornier corners of like Reddit or whatever. And
it comes from the fans.
And it was an organic thing. It was just corny.
It was a FUBU kind of.
Right. And now but Apple has its own
now it's a
weird
version
thing, where it's like, oh God, we're all such. And it's a little bit less like urgent than like for the good of the, because for the this period I'm talking about, like MLS 1.0 to 2.0, like it was based in a material reality that like the league
might die.
Could have disappeared like any day. Now you don't really get that sense anymore, and now it's just like Apple putting on a show where it's like, isn't it great that we're all MLS fans and this is so good? And there's really, you can feel a pressure. Or maybe it's not a pressure. I think this has showed up in other types of media too, like shows and to a lesser extent movies. I think movies have always been like, but like shows and other stuff where like everything has to be a feature presentation. It has to be the highlight. It really feels like everything is competing with that they're aware that like, oh, you might choose to turn on Netflix and watch that for 2 hours, and every Apple broadcast feels like it's trying to sell you on the fact like, oh, aren't you glad you watched this on Saturday night instead of watching?
Yeah, and there's kind of the stuff I'm talking about just now, where it's sort of like reading off facts and reading off like brochure lines, and it's also like in like the tone and dynamics, it's pretending like every goal, every chance, every like little shot is like the 90th minute of a tied World Cup final, where it's just like, oh my God, he has just scored, and it's a new moment. It's like a 20th minute goal in like April. It's just like, it doesn't feel like we're actually present in what we're watching. It feels like we're being told to feel a certain way that isn't very
and it
organic.
Doth protest too much. And I feel this way about like the team level promotion as well. I think I've been trying to check myself about this a bit, because like well, and like the most recent episodes, like not complaining about the social, because it's just the social media or whatever.
And at the
like,
end of the day, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. And like, it's like someone's job to go make these stupid posts, and like, that's how they feed themselves. So like, I'll get a grip. But, but like I noticed it this week as well, where like I put my finger on the tone of a lot of the club's posts and how it promotes itself in general, and its ads, not just social media. And it's just general pitch for like why you should come to Red Bull Arena. And it's really trying to like sell each game on being like an event, even when it's not going like overtly family friendly or anything, which I think, is fine to an extent. I would like to have a family one day. This is not an anti-natalist thing, but like,
this is for me.
But, like everything is like, oh, we're getting ready for the vibes for the party on the weekend. And like, they're showing the photos of like just a very ordinary, like to slightly lame looking like thing at the arena. And it's like, it would have been better if you just like did less, like why does every week have to be like a party? And it reminds me, it feels like every week we're trying to like promote like the coolest 8th grade dance ever, because it's like there's been a decision to go away from like the supporters culture thing, which is maybe not necessarily a bad decision, like because like things get stale, and also like some
also
of the supporters
it's inauthentic in its own way,
right? And then you're just like borrowing the supporters culture stuff, but like not down with it in other ways. So maybe that's not the worst thing in a vacuum. So but then they're like, oh, this is like a party, this is like a great time, and it's like, you're gonna come and there's gonna be lights and a smoke machine, and we're gonna like have some music, I guess, and it's gonna be sick. And it just feels like,
and dogs will be there.
Yeah, and it just feels like somebody like a DJ at like a dance party for 14-year-olds is hectoring me the whole time to like everyone get on the stage and do the Macarena. I'm like, this is a soccer game,
which
like,
we know is not DJ Phil's thing. He's a very mature DJ.
Well, it's also like, if you want to attract long-term fans, you're gonna have to like get them like a little bit
into soccer.
Well, you're gonna have to like, if they're gonna be fans week in week out, there's gonna be a lot of dud games that aren't big parties.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what sports is.
Right.
A lot of sports
it's undying
is,
loyalty to
it's
your team.
loyalty and just being in the rhythm of week in week out, and that sometimes it's most of the time it's not going to be the greatest thing you've ever seen, and that's like not what it's meant to be.
Yeah, God forbid like we were trying to run a baseball or basketball team and trying to keep this energy up for like 80 games a year or something.
Right, and it's also importantly, it doesn't mean that when it's not a good thing that it's like the worst fucking thing in the world. Talking to you Mets fans, like, oh my God, they lost a game. I want to kill myself. Like, please get a grip.
Even with Red Bulls fans, certainly through the years. I mean, it was like losing,
That's
literally winning the league title, but then, losing in the playoffs. It was like, oh my God, my life is absolute shit. This team is so Metro. And it's just like, it would be nice to kind of meet things in the middle where, sports is just sports,
right?
But
and I've been thinking about this in bringing it back to the Derby is why I've been thinking about this in this context, because this is by far the least I've been invested in a Derby result. The least I've been crushed by a loss. If I think about NYCFC and if I have to watch them, I don't like them still, obviously, and they do annoy me, and especially this fracas after the game is annoying because, again, it seems like they just don't even read the room, that like it's not that deep. Like everyone,
it's just like no one cares.
But I feel like I'm also still checked out about this because like I do feel a little like genuinely alienated from like the club and the experience, because I'm getting the message from the club itself that like, oh, this isn't like a weekly ritual where you show up and build a relationship with the team and the routine coming to it. Like every time you show up to the arena, every time you read messaging about why you should be a Red Bulls fan, when it's pitched to someone as though it's going to be their first time ever and it's going to be the coolest Willy Wonka experience in the world, like it makes it feel like, oh, this is not for me. Like this is not for the diehards, and I feel out of it.
And we've also kind of talked about how this isn't like just a team problem. Like it's a little bit symptomatic of how the world is, like with all the AI stuff now too, that like what we're being told is just totally incongruent to what is the material reality sometimes. Right. And like, I feel like that disconnect is just becoming ever so more apparent when you just don't like talk.
There's less there. I have been thinking about this because I have to admit, I did listen to most of the Jenny Nicholson 4-hour that video.
Oh, you did?
It was just on the. I was folding my clothes, it was in the background.
That's okay. I saw the whole thing without any
it was this like big video essay about like what a disaster the
Star
Star Wars hotel was, and like it kind of did remind me of the Red Bulls a little bit in some ways, where just like there's less there every year seemingly, and like
the part when she broke down, it's like, oh yeah, they had this Kim Possible mobile game that was like 30 times more thought out and developed than the entire experience of the Star Wars hotel, where you had like an app in it.
It's kind of like going to Red Bull Arena in 2010 when there was way less shit there, and it's like, yeah, there would have been nice for it to have a little bit more personality, but it was a more pure experience of going to a soccer game at that point. I think there's parallels there. Even though the team's better, it's still kind of like, yeah, I mean, who cares? This is all being done to try to convince some guy in Bergen County to bring his 12-year-olds here and spend $800 on Dippin' Dots.
Which is all to say that if you give us a check, we will TikTok dance at the Red Bull Hotel that you pay $4,000 a night to stay at.
Oh, fuck. What would be at the Red Bull Hotel? I hope they would let me leave practice in the middle of practice to go to a corner store and buy some candy. And then come back. I would hope they let me meet Carlos Rivas.
-1 RP.
The line for the Carlos Rivas meet and greet photo would be the longest one, clearly. Anyway, yeah, feels bad, man. And it seems bizarre that they're about to build a stadium out next to Citi Field to,
do that.
Just to do that, and it doesn't.
They'll build permanent smokestacks there.
God, This rivalry does not feel like, it's hard for me to imagine a future. Because also, like, as much as I dislike this team, I don't know any of their players. Keaton Parks is the only person I really know. I guess they brought back, what's his name? The ancient Argentine guy.
Maxi Morales.
And but he's hurt because he's basically...
Oh, is he still on the team? I thought I was just joking.
No, he left and then he came back.
No, but I thought he had left again. And
I don't know. Okay. He didn't play. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's crazy that this is my main emotional takeaway of this game when we had a player score a banger goal against our rivals, you know, and it's like, that's like, it feels like almost a footnote to me.
Well, in the stadium, I was celebrating pretty hard at that goal because it was really sick.
Yeah, and it's had the nice clang to it. And, you know, it looks like we did have a solid selection of chances here. I mean, our takeaway for the first two games that we won with 4 goals apiece was that they were, you know, surprisingly even or decently even, and we pulled away. Would it be safe to say that we were more or less even here, but just a little less clinical, or is that too generous to ourselves?
I think it was pretty much, kind of the simplest way you can put it. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we even have time to really like dive into this game too much more, but like it was kind of, cut and dry. I think kind of like what you just said, where it's like when you do rely on, having games where both teams are punching, but you're going to be more clinical, that's not always going to go in your favor. You can't just be clinical every single week or else you're, Real Madrid.
Yeah.
And I think it was another situation where I think maybe to drag it more into tactics and dynamics, sort of where I was saying we were forcing New England and DC to kind of chase games and give more space in the back and then push up more and then kind of leave themselves vulnerable to our press and our quick transitions. When you're playing City on the small pitch and, all that kind of stuff, that sort of factor is diminished. And I think maybe that can account for the lack of edge that we had in this game as opposed to New England and DC games. So
yeah, I thought though we were a few breaks away from it kind of going the same way as those Rev or like the New England and DC game had they not scored first, maybe. Well, even after we'd scored, I thought that we were just generating those chances that we weren't really clinical on the day, and we kind of suffered for it later when they did score. But I think we kept going at them, and it was a pretty even matchup, and it could have gone either way. But unfortunately, it didn't, and that's kind of where it is.
Yeah, giving up an early goal like that is pretty killer for this team, and having just a couple late pressing triggers and letting them kind of whip the ball around down the side and switching it, I think that's something that shouldn't be happening in the first 5 minutes of a game.
Yeah,
ideally. But we live on to fight them at home. Ultimately, it's a pretty tight loss. They are above us in the table now, but they have a game in hand, which is annoying. They're on a really hot streak of form after starting the season very poorly. Couldn't tell you. I mean, I guess their striker is like cost a bunch of money from Red Star, but other than that, like just a bunch of guys over there, and I'm sure they think that about our squad too.
Well, and just the whole league. I mean, as we look into the next week and just looking at the table, kind of like the last time we checked on the table, it's pretty narrow. Just a lot of mid teams. The parity is in effect, and we're now in 5th place, but we are 11 points behind Miami, 10 points behind Cincinnati. I mean, sad to say that, I think it was more, I think it was more before this group of games that Shield slipped away from us, but I think Shield is kind of gone at this point.
The draw against, if we had any chance, we needed to get 4 more points out of those games
like
against Chicago and Vancouver game.
Right.
And
And, it's kind of, going to see it. It's a long season. I'm saying I'm a little bit worried that it's now going to become the latest kind of just gray
longer season.
MLS season where every team feels kind of shitty and kind of good at the same time. And it doesn't feel like there's any hierarchy. And,
you hate to root for other teams to fail, right?
Do I?
Well, no, like you don't want to have to do it.
Well, and then the two teams that we're going to be playing this week, Charlotte and it's Orlando also.
Yeah.
Right? Both right in the middle of that pack as well. Charlotte's 7th, Orlando's 10th. Orlando's looks like they've picked up a little bit from being in the cellar the first couple months. So
Weirdly consequential week then.
That might be a kind of a good test, good litmus test for where the team's at.
Charlotte are in somewhat decent form. They've won 3, then drew 2, but their last 2 draws were at home, 0-0 draws. They own. I'm trying to think of how to phrase this properly, but very low scoring games. It looks like. Yeah.
They only have 14 goals for and 13 goals against in 15 total games. So like averaging under a goal a game for each team in their whole season. They have Dean Smith as the manager there now, so I guess they're playing real. That just makes me assume that they're playing really blocky 4-4-2 English ball.
Yeah, this is a game where it will be, I think, key to get a clean sheet here. Ultimately, as we said, Cornell played very well in our 2 wins against DC and New England. So I was going to say it's kind of shame we didn't get a clean sheet in those games. But, they did produce chances, and Cornell stood on his head a little bit. Mm. So this is a game where I think keeping a clean sheet against a very conservative Charlotte team will be good. I think, even with the relatively good goal-scoring form we've been in, it would be nice if we only needed to score 1 goal to walk away with a win. It's going to be Bark at the Park night, right? For you,
yeah, just
and
Bark
Luna.
night, yeah,
just Bark night.
Yes,
Bark at the Park is. You can't say that without the express written consent of the commissioner,
ASPCA probably or something
of baseball.
Yeah.
What do you have planned for Bark night at the park?
I'm just gonna try to get there
at the arena.
I guess to Harrison early so she can get her potty business done all soon.
I was actually wondering, what is it? Is the whole thing about like Bark at the Park nights and all that kind of shit? Is it just that like they can just poop in the stadium and the stadium has to like deal with that for the night?
No, I think it's just like you could take your dog somewhere like that's not the park for once.
Well, yeah, I know. The point is that right. you people want to bring their dogs there, but I'm saying as far as like
the logistics,
the reason that they can't do it every single night is that they wouldn't want to clean up shit.
Yeah,
every
probably.
Single
Yeah,
night.
but also like they only have the one section. There's like a lot of liability waivers that I had to sign with her vaccination stuff. So getting all that stuff is probably like an insurance nightmare for the
Did
team.
you have to certify that Luna is not a Bully XL?
No, they're not dog racist at Red Bull Arena.
Really?
So I can bring Pimpy and Babe.
Yeah, you can bring Pimpy. You can bring your Instagram crossbreeds.
I'm gonna bring a horse and be like, "This is my dog.
This is my dog." Can't say it's not.
All right,
a canine.
I'm gonna cut this line of jokes short. I feel like it heads in a bad direction. But you have to sit in a different section.
Yeah, 223, I think.
So all the dogs are going to be in the same section.
Yeah. It'll be a loud section, probably. That should be the new supporters section.
All right. Well, that's exciting.
There's a parade on the pitch after the game. So you and I will walk, I guess, that.
Are you going to do like the little walk that they do at the Westminster Dog Show?
She's not trained to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it going to be like after all the players have left?
Probably. I don't know. Maybe they want to stick around to see it.
All right. Yeah. Maybe the players will bring their dogs.
Should I bring football cleats to wear on the pitch after?
Maybe. I wonder if they'll have a rule.
Yeah.
And then Saturday is also at home, right? Orlando. We got a doubleheader here. I'm thinking about what you just said, Cork, about there finally being some distance from the Shield. And whether that affects my expectations. I think I'm at a point where expecting 6 points here does feel like it's still kind of asking a lot. And I would say, if we're going to be a Shield contending team, that's what you'd ask. But again, it seems like we're sort of falling and settling into that sort of 1A or second tier here, not that tier. One thing to consider is that Sean Nealis is suspended for his double yellow cards against City, so that builds in some natural rotation for us, thankfully.
Did he get an additional suspension, or was it just a fine?
Why would he
have gotten additional?
He got something for like not leaving the pitch.
Oh, I think that was just a fine. I think.
Yeah, I don't think that's an additional suspension.
Okay.
But because it was just like a tactical foul issue, it wasn't like violent play,
yeah.
right? But yeah, I would expect a win against Charlotte at the very least. You know what? I'll still be disappointed if we only draw against Orlando. Although Orlando is sort of the weird chaos result the last sort of 5 years. But I think I'll start off and say getting a win against Charlotte, bouncing back from the loss against City, I think is more key. And then we can have house money for Orlando with still slight expectation of win.
Do you think Orlando is going to be chippy again?
Do they still have that Jansen guy who gets absolutely furious every week?
That's you mean Orlando?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Well, yeah, they have that guy. I thought you said Charlotte for a second. I was like, wait, the Jensen's not on them. But yeah, I mean, I mean, to their credit, I mean, it kind of reminds me of the Jose Mourinho quote where he said his favorite manager was Tony Pulis because he said his teams look exactly like Tony Pulis teams. They do exactly what he's telling them to do and all that kind of stuff. Oscar Pereira might be my favorite manager in MLS because his teams. They play like Oscar Pereira. They play kind of like little dickheads, and that's really baked. That's baked into their approach and their identity, and doesn't always work, but it makes for some pretty challenging games and some challenging situations, and kind of like we're saying, they're always a good test. The chaos result, as Brit said, the last few years.
Right. I've always kind of liked calling the Orlando matchup a players' rivalry. Right?
Yeah.
Because the players are the ones who kind of care, I guess, and the fans don't really seem to.
Although we've churned pretty heavily since. I mean, how was our last game? Was that chippy?
I don't know. I feel like I just get the vague sense that they've all maybe been that way.
I mean, this is making me realize that I do think there has been a shift this year where the opposing team, in particular center backs, are not as furious every week. That was something that really stuck out to me last year too. And in 2021, it was a little bit more obvious to me why. Last year, we didn't even seem that physical.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was really confused why Jansen and guys like that were so pissed off constantly. But that seems to have changed.
I can't believe they assigned Angel Hernandez to that game.
Hey, as long as I don't have to hear Angel Hernandez's voice like I do with the new refs, which I'm still upset about. But
Oh yeah, they had that at the game.
oh yeah, you said you couldn't hear it, right?
I couldn't hear Jonathan Freeman say anything. Yeah, it was just kind of like hearing the adults and the peanuts.
Just get rid of
the
it.
Stadium, yeah.
Just get rid
Well,
of
it doesn't help the in-stadium crowd. It's like designed for television. Maybe this is like the thing. Apple might be trying to like NFL soccer or something and make things better, or like FIFA with the rules and make it better for TV. But like it's just an in-stadium feeling.
I think for Bark Night, they should have dogs bark, whatever.
They should. It should be like when they have the Super Bowl broadcast on Nickelodeon and SpongeBob does it. They should just have a dog bark the things. But well, we'll see how it goes. Best of luck on your Bark Night adventure.
Thank you. We might get an interview from Luna next week.
Yeah, I'm sure we will.
Yeah.
It's Alex!